It's loading. There we go. Okay. Sorry that took forever. Okay. Double checking again. I'm sorry. Everyone can see my screen, like not just me. You can see the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes, you're
Thank you.
good.
Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. Let's update everyone on what's we've got going on the past month. A lot of you might know that we recently went to Women's Health Research Day. So Madison actually got an award for her poster, which was super exciting. You can see her little award and her ribbon up in the corner right here. Yeah, it was very nice. And we got to saw a bunch of um, old faces, but they'll be back soon. So it was good to see everybody. It was a fun time. Um, and then Dr. Martin went to ASAM with the OB Motivate clinic. This picture of a bear. That's what I got.
That's the only
um,
photo I got.
yeah,
Big
did it go
bear.
well?
Yeah, ASAM was great. They actually, for the first year, every time they had a breakout, like for like, with like multiple sessions going on at the same time, they had a perinatal focused
Oh,
breakout
nice.
session for substance use
Perfect.
disorders. Yeah, it was a great representation.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, love the bear. Also very exciting, we're welcoming a new postdoc to help with Madison. So his name is Austin Jones. I don't know if he's on here today, but if you see some new emails or just a new face around the lab, that's him. He's going to be helping out with a bunch of data management stuff with Madison as well, and also be leading the summer curriculum course this coming summer. These are the same submitted abstracts that we've had listed but CPDD is the next one coming up in June. So a bunch of our lab members are going to be attending that conference in New Orleans. And then we have some published manuscripts here. And then here are the manuscripts in review. We have a few. And then if you aren't already, here's our Twitter handle. Follow all of our latest publications and poster presentations, conferences, anything that's noteworthy that are exciting that we've had happen in the lab gets posted here, as well as the recordings of the lab meeting at the YouTube channel. Our LinkedIn, we also keep everybody up to date on. We also have our lab Instagram. We've got a bunch more followers now and a bunch more fantastic posts, so keep track of those on there. We also have a bunch of our lab leads pictured here. We have Arjun and Ira, who are an undergraduate in the Guaranteed School of Medicine program at VCU, and Ira is also actually in high school. But they are both wonderfully leading our media and all of those posts. And then we have Madison, who is our regulatory data manager, as well as Austin, I mentioned was new to the lab. And then we have myself and Michelle as the lab interventionist. And we have James as our community engagement manager. So you'll see more of those pictures moving forward regarding specific projects. So for Project SORT, study led by Michelle. This is investigating the relationship between sleep and opioid use disorder. Recruitment is pretty much complete, but chart abstractions are ongoing by the lab members who are working on this study. And then we have the registry study, which is tracking clinical outcomes of pregnant and postpartum patients. who seek treatment at the OB Motivate Clinic. Same as the previous study, recruitment is complete, but chart abstractions are still ongoing, which are being completed by the lab members listed below. And then we have CBTIO that is using data from both SORT and registry. But this study is adapting what you call a cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, specifically for people with opioid use disorder or OUD. We have started recruiting, which is really exciting. We have Michelle as our interventionist and me as the lead RA, as well as a few other familiar names working on this study as well. And then we also have a Lemborexant 2.0 study, which is a medication treatment study testing the effects of the medication Lemborexant on insomnia and impulsivity among people with OUD. This study is currently in the planning phase, so we haven't started recruitment just yet, but Madison is our study lead for this project. And then we also have Project Castle. This study has developed a computerized intervention that educates pre-medical and medical professionals on substance use disorder stigma. We recently submitted a manuscript, but now we are in the study pre-testing phase, similar to Lembo 2.0. And then we have our lab members listed below who are also assisting on the study. And then we also have the educational studies led by Dr. Madison Marcus. So I mentioned earlier that we have a summer curriculum program coming up, which Madison has led in the past, but this summer will be led by Austin. And then we also have the Jeffress Project, which is essentially addressing maternal morbidity and mortality by adapting a patient navigation model for birthing people with substance use disorder. We've already established our interorganizational partnerships. So we're collaborating together with Urban Baby Beginnings, Rams in Recovery, OB Motivate, the Ivy Lab, as well as the Institute of Women's Health, the School of Health Policy, and School of Nursing to address maternal morbidity and mortality. And James and I are co-leading the study as well. Here is our list of pending research support. And then we also wanted to highlight a few upcoming events. I believe, yeah, this was April 27th was actually yesterday, but Birth and Color had a book talk from one of Linda Janet Holmes's books called Safe in a Midwife's Hands. That was at the Richmond Library yesterday. But coming up coming up, Health of Women's Research Conference in Short Pump and the VCU Research to Recovery Conference later in May as well. But if anyone wants more information on either of those conferences, feel free to reach out to me and we can get your questions answered. The next lab meeting is to be determined sometime in May, but just look out for an email like always, and I will update you with the time and date. But that's pretty much it for lab updates. I'm also presenting to you guys the poster that I presented for Women's Health Research Day, but also I'm presenting for CPDD. So if anyone has any really good feedback or questions about anything, that would be great just to help me practice my spiel, I guess. But yeah, let me share my screen.
Thanks, Sam.
I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, you're sure. I was just gonna say, for the conference that's on Friday, the Health of Women conference that's being done by the Institute for Women's Health, they gave me some free registrations because I'm speaking at it. I guess that's their way of paying me. Um, and so I think I have one or two left. So if anyone was planning on going and you haven't registered, just send me an email and I'm happy to help you out.
Cool. Thanks for the info. That's really exciting, actually, because conferences are really expensive.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Can everybody see my other PowerPoint? Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Alrighty. Well, so I was interested in analyzing the sex differences in a young adult sample with severe alcohol use disorder, as well as their antisocial behaviors. And what I found from the previous literature was that younger people, typically aged 20 to 39, are disproportionately affected by alcohol use, with the highest proportion being 13% of alcohol-related deaths occurring within this age group. Um, Alcohol use disorder is also prevalent among young adults. Increased alcohol consumption is also associated with higher levels of antisocial behaviors. And these antisocial characteristics are interestingly can distinguish chronic and remitting cases of alcohol use disorder among college students. And we typically believe that males with alcohol use disorder typically report more antisocial behaviors than women with alcohol use disorder. So the aim of this study was to just compare males and females with severe AUD or alcohol use disorder and their self-reported antisocial behaviors. We used data from the secondary analysis from the Genes, Addiction, and Personality study of severe alcohol use disorder. The current analyses only included young adults being aged 18 to 25. The majority of participants were female, and the minority at 26%, around 26% were male. The mean age was about 22 years and a standard deviation of about 2 years. Participants were recruited online through Facebook, Research Match, and some other online modalities. They completed an anonymous web-based survey that included socio-demographic factors and a 17-item antisocial behavior scale. These responses from the antisocial behavior scale ranged from 0 being never to 3 being more than 5 times that behavior being endorsed. The current analyses, however, dichotomized the responses to recoding them as never being 0, and if they'd endorsed any of the behaviors at all, to equal 1. I also used chi-square and t-tests to compare the self-reported antisocial behavior scores between both men and women. We also see that the majority of our participants were aged 20 to 25 at about 93%, and then 6.5% were 18 to 19 years old. And over in the results section, just to go over some demographics, continued. The majority of our participants at 79.8% were white or Caucasian. And then the majority of participants also identified living with their significant other or spouse, I'm sorry, actually. They reported living with other family at 23.3%, but living with a significant other was not too far behind, as well as living with friends. The graphs over here represent what we found to be significant. So the self-reported antisocial behaviors that were endorsed, like being an irresponsible parent, getting in a car accident, getting arrested, having been convicted of a crime, getting into physical fights quite often, being fired from a job, or having conned another person. All of those were found to be significant between sex. All other antisocial behaviors were non-significant. And then here we have at table 2 a sum score of the antisocial behaviors by sex. And the overall score did not was non-significant. So that leads me to say that antisocial behaviors are common among young adults with severe alcohol use disorder, though young men may disclose more antisocial behaviors than women with alcohol use disorder, which suggests that these behaviors persist among young adults. And future research should continue to investigate sex differences and other factors relating to alcohol consumption when developing individualized treatments. That's about it. Questions, comments, concerns? Thanks to Shonda.
Good job. Can you give us an example? Just I don't know the scale, Amber, of like what
Mhm.
the question, how the questions were kind of worded.
Yeah. Um, so if I remember, I really should probably know off the top of my head, but if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure they're phrased like, have you ever gotten in a car accident? And then let me just look it up actually, because okay. Yeah, for the physical fights, it's literally just it states I got into physical fights. And you could choose never, 1 to 2 times, 3 to 5 times, more than 5 times. Um, another one, like the accident one, I was in an accident because um, I was driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Being 0, never, 1 to 2 times, so on and so forth. Stuff like that. I know that I didn't have enough room to place all of the 17 items, but it was so we have irresponsible parent, car accident, arrested, convicted, physical fights, being fired, having been conned. It was also having hit your significant other, having borrowed money without the intention of paying it back. Um, um, it was something about stable housing. Sorry, I was just looking at what Deshauna said. Let's see. Is there a description provided for irresponsible parenting, or was it just, yeah, it was, this entire scale was just self-reported. So the specific question, since I have it pulled up, it asked, for the irresponsible parent, let's see. I was an irresponsible parent. For example, I left my children alone at a young age or did not provide them with adequate food, clothing, or medical care. So that question specifically was a little bit more descriptive than some of the other ones, but it was definitely just all of these were self-reported by the participants, so they could leave it up to their interpretation. I can't imagine a lot of people were wanting to disclose them being an irresponsible parent, but
Thank you. It does help to know that they did provide some examples.
yeah.
Great job, Amber. It's so fun to see some of this gap data come to life. Can everyone
Thanks,
hear me
Michelle.
okay? Yeah.
Yes.
My Wi-Fi is a little in and out, so I'm sorry if it's a little if it cuts out. But one thing you did such a great job. One thing is I would be careful with the discussion
Okay.
making like generalizations, like big generalizations, like antisocial behaviors are common among young adults with severe AUD. Like that, we found that in this sample. So you should
Mhm.
clarify, like within this sample, we found that. But especially if this is like a new study, this hasn't been looked at before, we can't really extrapolate that to the general population quite yet. So I would
Mhm.
just like add some clarifiers in your discussion, but also like when you're talking about this poster, like in this sample, we found this.
Right.
Like other studies can look at it as well. But yeah, just a suggestion.
100%. I hear you. That's a good point too. Thank you.
Yeah, and like on that
So,
note, Amber, I was just, this is something just for a poster you're just gonna have to like just have in your back pocket. It's more for like when you write it up later. But like the prep, like for that point, like that they were common. It's from what I understand from your introduction is that this has been these antisocial behaviors have been looked at before among, is it just among adults, not young adults with AUD? Like what is that kind of what we know and we don't know among young adults?
yes, I specifically antisocial, at least the literature that I was looking at, it was more just towards adults in general. No one's really singled out young adults aged 18 to 25 as like a separate sample. But there has been studies that looked at AUD in young adults. Like there's plentiful of research on that, just not specifically regarding like antisocial behaviors among young adults. Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, I was just there. I think maybe your introduction can be a little bit more streamlined to identify what the gap in knowledge is. Because
Mm-hmm.
it was hard it just as someone who's newer to the topic, I was like, oh, so hold on, is the focus on young adults and that's
Yeah.
the novelty, or is it severe AUD and not just A? You see, there's
Okay.
there's lots,
Yes.
there were lots of options since there's like sex differences, severe
Yes.
AUD, young adults,
Mm-hmm.
not just adults.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe making a little more clear what is known already at the intersection of AUD, antisocial behavior, in people.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just to have in the back of your pocket, like when I look at these graphs, I don't know, is this mean it's highly prevalent?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know because I don't know what the normal prevalence is of these behaviors in people, men and women, let alone people, adults with AUD, which is what you're telling me is known. So I think having those kind of clear numbers, either on your
Okay.
poster, at least in the back of your mind, so you can clearly say, oh, these numbers are actually higher than what's been reported for antisocial behaviors in adults, not young adults with AUD, or whatever does exist.
Right. So just something to compare these numbers to.
Yeah, yeah, because looking at it, I don't know if that's highly prevalent or not. Maybe that's
Right.
just young adults just have a lot of things like that. I don't know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Thank you. I could see how you could, there's a lot of options in the introduction on which way I could go with the gap. Anything else? Anyone?
I guess another question I had too is like, is this a validated scale?
The antisocial scale.
Mhm.
This I might need help on, Michelle or Nicole. I want to say yes, but I think it seemed like more of, no, it wasn't. Nicole, it
No,
wasn't.
it wasn't a validated metric. It was just like 17 items. It wasn't from a specific scale.
Okay. That's good to know.
So
Too.
does the sum score even mean anything, I guess is my question. Like, what does that mean? Because it sounds like, again, not being like being new to the space, it seems like all those questions are like distinct questions, like a certain behavior.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to, and now if you want to sum it and just say like the number of behaviors that were endorsed, since you did dichotomize each of them, is fine. But I would just right now, the way that it's presented, it makes it seem like it's this validated scale with like an accepted sum score. But
Yeah.
it sounds like they're just the 17 you said behaviors, yes or no, and then you developed or you went the next step and created your own subscore, which is fine. I think just being a little more clear about that would be good.
And just clarifying that it wasn't a validated measure.
Yeah, because right now where it says like ASB scale, that makes me think that this is like a real, like a, not,
Oh, I see.
it wasn't real, but you know, like something that I
Yeah.
can like look up online,
Right.
go and find, where it was 17, you know, the number of behaviors.
Yeah, just to reiterate that, like Amber, you can say that they endorsed a higher number of them, for example, but because there's no cutoffs or thresholds or anything, like we can't really, and yeah, so it just makes the sum score itself not super useful.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would consider if you do want to look at the total, I would just do a frequency count. I wouldn't even do a mean standard deviation because this is just looking at the frequency, like the number of behaviors that they endorsed. Because you dichotomized their responses to yes and no. So it's the number of behaviors that they endorsed that happened often.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would consider not doing the mean standard deviation, but just doing the counts.
Okay. Okay. One other question. Great job, Amber. Really, really nice. One other question is, you said you were recruiting the participants through Facebook Research Match and a bunch of other modalities. Do you have any information about like where in the country these people are from? Like, are they kind of generally from like the Richmond area, or is this really like all across the United States? It could be from anywhere, more rural, more urban. That might be interesting to include if you have it. Yeah, that's a really good question. I really don't know. The extent that I know is just the online modalities. But I don't know, Michelle or Nicole, if you know geographically where these people come from. I don't think I don't think we collected data within the GAP data about where they physically were located, or at least I didn't see that in SVSS.
Yeah, it is. So Facebook and Research Match, it is um, like universal. It's anywhere in the US, so it could be really geographically spread out. And we do have like the mailing address and like zip codes and stuff, so we could look at that. But because we do like send the mailing kits for their DNA, but that just probably wasn't in the data set you have. But it would be
Yeah,
interesting, like a publication, I think definitely to look at the rural, urban, geographic spread.
yeah, that makes sense. I think it is good to note that AB or Annabeth like beautifully cleaned up the data for me on just I picked out some variables I wanted, like I was interested in, and she sent me the very clean SPSS data sheet. So it was really easy for me to kind of just like run the chi-square and t-test analyses and do all that, which I'm very thankful for. But yes, it makes sense that the original data would have the zip codes and mailing address, stuff that I did not have. Yeah, I think it's a strength of the study too, that it is from such like a diverse sample, geographical sample. So that's great. I think if I were to do it again, honestly, I also would break it up to like 21 to 25 and 18 to 20. At first I was just interested in breaking up the 20s and the teens, but I feel like, I don't know, just for fun. I feel like maybe 21-year-olds would, I don't know how much more different that would be, but breaking it up into legal drinking age and non-legal drinking age, I think would be cool moving forward, or just looking at in a separate project.
Yeah, I think keeping it the way it is, your sample is good because one of the other strengths of the GAP study, like in addition to what Madison said, is its large sample. So like you have this big N. And that was the benefit when Annabeth wrote her paper using the pretty data set that you worked from when she wrote, because she used everyone. She didn't, it wasn't just young adults. And that was the strength, is that it was like 1,000 people or something crazy.
Yeah.
But something, again, I'm not one of the GAP investigators, but helping Annabeth with her paper that used gap data from before. I think I remember something else we ran into when she was getting her stuff together for CPDD a few years ago, was that this is a non-treatment seeking population, is my understanding.
That sounds familiar.
And so we really had to be careful with what the messages or the, what
Mhm.
we said was the next steps. Because it's all cross-sectional, so you can't really draw any conclusions from the data that are clinically relevant, but you can use this as very rich formative data to inform subsequent research. But I think I remember something about that and just not making it treatment specific, which is so weird for us because everything else we do in the lab is a treatment population, but this was not a treatment population, is my understanding.
Right. So just kind of rephrasing my discussion around treatment, like not to be around treatment, I guess.
I think so, yeah. From
Yeah.
what I remember, I don't know if Nicole or Michelle more, but I think this was like people could have been in treatment, but most people were not, or most people were not seeking treatment. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the Facebook and in the online, like we ask about treatment, like if they've received treatment for their OUD, but they're not included or excluded, like according to that. So,
Okay.
GAP does have like a whole other arm that is in person recruited from treatment facilities, which is really cool. But that is not in the online sample.
Noted. Anything else? I've got a lot of tweaks that I'm excited to make. Or just around my spiel.
Yeah, and just one last thing, Amber, just like with your stats,
Yeah.
because you have like chi-squared and t-test compared. So for the demographics, like you're not comparing those, you're just describing that, at least according to what I see on the poster. That's just the full
Yeah.
sample.
Mhm.
So I think since you're just gonna be, I don't know, I would talk to the people on the poster with you, but just because if it's gonna be just frequency counts, like yes and no,
Mhm.
like again, you definitely don't need a t-test.
Okay.
Because you're looking at the proportion, because you're dichotomizing the variable. So either a chi-square or a different type of frequency test. So and then the other thing is that it looks like you dichotomize your outcome variable into the 0 and 1.
Mhm.
So it went from a 0 to 3, like kind of like a never to 3, which was more than 5 times.
Yeah.
So what did you do with the people that scored 1 and 2?
They're also included. They're also included in if they'd endorsed it at all, it was basically um in this yes binary.
Okay, so you dichotomize it into never or everyone else.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Never or anyone else.
okay.
Like I haven't done this at all, but yes, I did it sometimes. Yes, I've done it
Which
3 to
totally
5.
makes sense. So I think you can just simplify that a little bit in your methods.
Just say yes, no.
You can just simplify.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So since these were already chi-squares, are you saying just to kind of turn this itself into a different chi-square or just some other frequency count?
No, your p-values that you have at the top of your results that are per individual item,
Mm-hmm.
those are the p-values I'm assuming for the proportion that scored a 1 versus a 0.
Yeah,
The proportion, you're comparing the proportion of males versus females.
okay.
So that's, I think
Yeah,
that's,
this is attached to the graphs, the figure ones. But you said I can leave my demographics and stuff,
yeah,
because those are just descriptives.
yeah.
Okay.
And then for your frequency, if you're gonna look at the sum, if you wanna look at the sum, I would just do a frequency count and just describe like men on, you can do your range, your median, things like, I wouldn't do a mean.
Okay.
I would just describe like men, this was the median number of things that they endorsed with the range.
Okay. That sounds good. Any other comments?
No, I don't have any more. I'll stop.
No, you're good. Keep them coming if you do have more, though. This was really helpful to have your eyes look at it. And I'm really grateful to Nicole and Michelle because they definitely worked really hard getting me to this point over the winter too, when everyone was like on holiday. So I'm really grateful. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, they always have the deadline for CPTD abstracts like right after the holidays. It's like
Yeah, they did extend it though, which was really helpful. Yeah. But okay, I'll stop sharing.
great job.
Thanks. Okay, does anybody else have anything to add before we hop off the meeting for today? Cool. All right, well, if anyone has any questions about the summer or anything like that, anything regarding trainings in the lab, just reach out to me via email and then we can get your questions answered. But thanks, guys. See you later.
Great job.
Thanks. Bye, Amber.